is no backup. It's just like, okay, if Adam's not here, we're just gonna have to just roll forward as is. So there we go. There we go. Anyway, welcome everybody to Brainfood Live on Air, bringing it to you every Friday, no fail. It's episode 303, and this is a show that I've been wanting to do for a very long time. I've kind of been waiting for the market to really catch up with the urban myth, but we've started to see it happen increasingly in our community. Where we've got some just genuinely fraudulent behavior from what might or might not be job candidates, as a matter of fact. It could well just simply be criminal behavior, but they're coming into the pipeline. And we really need to figure out exactly what our policy is and what our strategy is, because we've just assumed that actually traditional recruiting approaches are going to suffice. But I think everyone's seen the deep fakes. Everyone's tried, the voice cloning, etc. Very, very convincing. We're at the point where it's very difficult for a human being to judge it in the traditional way. So that's the topic of today, folks. Mitigation strategies versus fake job candidates. Okay, listen, let's do some sound checks before everything kicks off. Just want to make sure everyone here is okay. I think, loud and clear on Crowdcast. Thank you very much, Stephen. I assume everyone else agrees with Stephen Rothberg in the audience there, that you can hear and see us okay. We are live streaming also on LinkedIn, and I believe we're breaking like 10 LinkedIn streams now. So thank you everyone who's clicked on the restream link and helped us broadcast the show. By the way, I'm going to try and get more people to do this. This is free to do, but it helps you host the show, and it helps obviously broadcast the Brainfood Live concept, get people talking about it a bit more, but also gets more traffic to your page. So if you're interested in getting more eyeballs to your LinkedIn, why not get involved there? So if you're watching this on any of our LinkedIns, Adam's LinkedIn, my LinkedIn, I think Boris is doing it, Patinas doing it as well, Bob Pulver's doing it. If you're watching on any of those channels, let me know. And can you hear us okay? Just drop a comment into the LinkedIn thread. I can actually see me there, actually, so I think I'm okay. Okay, cool. Let's kick off. Let's continue. Firstly, before we go further, we need to thank our sponsors, because without our sponsors, Brainfood Live cannot continue. And guess what? One of our sponsors today is not only a really good friend of Brainfood, huge supporter of the organization, but they're also a business that's put some real effort into investigating this very topic. This is BrightHire, of course, interview intelligence company, one of the leading players in the field. They're the organization that's basically going to help track and do note-taking and interview intelligence on the interviews you do. And you can imagine how that's a very nice and natural segue to also start doing things like fraud detection and creating some sort of service where recruiters will get indications as to where you might pay a little bit more attention as to how those interviews are going. So check out BrightHire. They're a great company, and they will have mitigation sort of services coming out shortly. There's an update on them, I think, for next week. So I've just got a message from Pat there to tell me that so watch this space kind of announcement coming in next week or so. So BrightHire.com, check them out. Okay, let's kick off. Kick off. We've already kicked off, but let's just say hello to Adam. Adam's joining us from Heathrow. Thank you for joining, Adam, as usual. How you been? Tell us a little bit about why you're in Heathrow. Actually, this is something we should probably sort of just establish some context here.
Yep. Thanks for having me again. I think this is about 200th time. I was working it out the other day. You've really made me as a human.
I've made you, man.
Yeah, you're the guy behind the guy.
Not at all, mate. We've been doing this together really for years. It wouldn't be it without you. So it's like it's a clear partnership, mate. So
I've done it from a lot of different locations. So have you. You've done it from far more far flung locations, but I've done it from probably more different locations. Anyway, I'm here because quite simply, it's my son's rugby tour this weekend. We're flying to Valencia this afternoon, and he's playing against 6 Spanish teams over the next couple of days, and hopefully they'll win the tournament, bring it back to Scotland.
That's it, and I think you will. The great young player, that lad. So let's see whether he can carry it through. So fantastic
Hopefully.
stuff. All right, let's kick off. Again, I say this, but we need to review the newsletter real quick before we get into the story here. Did you read it last week, Adam? And if so, pick out a couple of things that you thought was interesting, mate.
I did. So first of all, let's talk about Dave Owen's like 7-step framework for like the future of HR tech, the future of recruiting. So it's a bit of a history lesson and a future gaze, and it charts the evolution from like the start of recruitment, which was very much paper based, word of mouth, local, slow. And then we moved into the era of talent acquisition, which is, I think, what we're probably still in today, which is more recruiter focused, internet enabled, um, you know, very digital, moving into better candidate experiences and making experiences for candidates and recruit and hiring managers better. And that takes us into the new era that he's talking about, which is talent engineering. So he's describing talent engineering, which is very candidate and hiring manager focused. It's AI powered, it's rapid, it's high in objectivity. Um, we've got a it's not replacing humans, but it's definitely changing how humans are interacting with it. Um, it's not entirely AI generated, but quite a lot is. And so, yeah, I mean, I like the way he's described it. How long is it before we are fully in the world of what he calls talent engineering? It might be the next year, or it might be the next 6 years, and it entirely depends on the large language models and the capability um, at the like base model level is definitely there to enable all of it, but the application layer needs a lot of work. And in our world, we have a very considerable amount of blockers to innovation in terms of humans, in terms of the existing technology ecosystem that we're all pretty much bound to. And I think early adopters are going to be for the full talent engineering process, which is almost exclusive, almost recruiterless, really. It doesn't mean there's not talent acquisition people. It means that the talent acquisition people are doing, a lot of
Different
other
things.
things around engineering related things and engineering the candidate experiences and the hiring manager experiences and the skills taxonomies and that type of thing. So I love that. Love it.
Yeah.
I think it's definitely going to happen. It's a case of when.
Yeah, I think Dave as well. He's making a habit of pushing out these really quite interesting posts, supported by some fantastic visuals as well. I think he's putting it together himself. So, Dave Owen, a person I think we should be following on LinkedIn if you're not already. I've just shared the link, by the way, to his post there. You can read that and then follow him from there. I'm going to get Dave onto the show as soon as I'm back in the UK, get our time zone synced up. I'd love to get his vision on things. I think we are probably moving faster towards that future that he suggested than perhaps we realize. I actually think sort of the Trump scenario, Trump tariff 2.0 is going to accelerate all of this. Because I think one of the worst things any business can do right now is think, right, I'm just going to slap on more headcount. How can you even think like this when you've got no clue where the where policies are, like how much things cost. Like there's companies right now that literally they don't know whether they're going to be bankrupt next week or whether they're able to go and trade simply because the tariff rate is going up from 50 to 250%, depending on what you've got delivered. That could actually make you bankrupt, mate. If the rate stays up there and you didn't anticipate for it, no one did, then you could go under. So anyway, I think Trump inadvertently is going to accelerate us further forward in the same way COVID did on remote. It's going to be as shocking as that. And we're going to see a lot of the Dave Owen type of stuff start happening a lot sooner as a result of some of this. So this is me trying to paint sort of a happy picture, some sort of silver lining from Trump's catastrophic tweeting. But anyway, good one. Let's have another one. Adam, what else was interesting for you?
Right. It's not quite the same theme. There's a lot of generative AI. Everything's generative AI, really, in terms of the conversation at the moment. So, Matt Bradburn's prompt engineering for startup, scale up HR and TA teams. It was great. It was all good stuff. It was all like the takeaways are things like be clear, be literal, be structured, use planning steps, iterate, format instructions properly. Um, Use a lot of context chunks that you can like store and then reuse. Um, the problem I have with a lot of these like how to prompt engineering things is I just don't believe that humans are going to be prompt engineering like that. in the near future. The application layer technologies are all developing so fast that the days of people going on to ChatGPT or Claude or whatever and say, design me a job career framework for our engineering, whatever. It's not going to happen because it's going to be baked into the HR system. It's going to be like, they will catch up, and they will catch up with how to like make it a much more automated and conversational process than somebody sitting with a how-to guide on prompt engineering at the side. I just don't think that's a real hacky thing, and it's great for the early adopters and the people that want to hack stuff on their own. But the mass market's not going to sit with a guide to how to do prompt engineering and start flicking through that and trying to work out. It's like a translation on it'd be like me taking my how to speak Spanish book on holiday with me. It's not a future thing, but really, I thought it was really good. It was a really good way of describing how to prompt engineer.
Yeah, it's a bridge.
How to prompt, not engineer, how to prompt.
Yeah, it's a bridge to, it's probably going to be something that is obsolete in 6-12 months or whatnot as the AI gets better, and it learns more and more about sort of what it is we want, and we won't have the requirement to be skillful in instructing it. So that's basically where the direction of travel is. But in the interim, it's worth learning how this operates. Often even to wire your own brain is to think how the AI sort of is going to evolve. It's almost like we've got to learn it in order for us to know exactly what we're doing. So I do think you're right on one level, but on another, I think even though it may not be, a requirement for you to do this, it might be worth your while to get into it so you understand how these things can actually output at this kind of that kind of level. It's almost like learning the skill the hard way. It's worth doing rather, because it's 6 months down the line it will be done for you, but your ability to do it in a harder way is going to help. Cool. Give us one more, mate, before we get into fraud.
I mean, it's just like maths. Yes, we can all use a calculator and do the calculations on that, but actually, if you can do things on the fly in your own brain, it's just a bit of a life hack. And it's the same as coding. Like, people are going, well, programming is not something that you're going to be needing in the future. Software development is not something that, and that's just not really true, because there's so many like little bits here and there that windsurf just doesn't develop that thing for you. It doesn't make that thing and that thing sit together. You can't just use Codium and do that. So having the base understanding of how it works and like experimenting at this point is definitely, I think, something to do. I agree.
I think it's a differentiator. But on this note, we should talk about just a little bit more, because I think it is going to be a differentiator between the people that can do it the hard way and know how to do it the easy way. So I think that's the optimal skill kind of mix everyone should have. Imagine sourcing as a classic example. Like, if you did know how to source without AI, but plus you then knew how to source with AI, probably you're going to be a better sourcer. Because the next generation coming up will not learn how to do it without AI. And I think there's going to be certain circumstances where they're going to fall short simply because either it's not available or things don't work in the way in which you thought they did. And that's where you would come in with a bit more of that knowledge. There'll be a big moat between the two of those. So yeah, interesting how we do the learning and development for ourselves here. All right, cool. Give us one more before we crack into this, mate.
All right. So another good one that I liked was Martin Burns's LinkedIn post about how to really make talent intelligence work, how to build talent intelligence ecosystems, I think was the way that he described it. And he kind of contrasts outdated talent analytics, which are like looking backwards, they're siloed, and then with modern kind of talent intelligence ecosystems, which are much more real time and predictive, aligned with business strategy. I'm certainly not an expert on talent intelligence. I know a bit about it, but the key components of an effective talent intelligence ecosystem, he said, was things like external market integration and predictive modeling and cross-functional alignment. And it really is it's not exactly a how-to guide, but it is kind of a summary how-to guide, I think. And so if I was a talent acquisition leader, I'd be reading that and I'd be using it almost as a blueprint for, are we doing these things? And if we're not doing these things, we need to look into them in a bit more detail. And if we're already doing them, fine, we're probably doing a good enough job at this point.
Yeah, I agree. I think it's a very good overview. And if you're looking at setting up some sort of talent intelligence function, you're definitely worthwhile spending 5 minutes reviewing that from mine. He's actually one of those that's producing some really good content in recent days. Always been a great writer, but I think he's someone, again, people should be following. Okay, cool. Let's get on with the show. In the meat of it, we're talking about mitigation strategies against fraudulent candidates. Firstly, Adam, do you have an opinion on this scenario? Where do you fit and stand on this? Like, have you had any episodes you want to introduce? Do you think it's even a problem? Where are you with it, mate?
Oh, it's definitely a problem. I mean, I think it's a massive problem, um, because for all sorts of different reasons. I think I feel like I'm here to learn more than to like give any comments. Other than we definitely need to not have scenarios where recruiters are spending time trying to assess people that don't exist or people that are making stuff up and whatever it might be. Um, we've got to put better things in at the application phase, and I know that Maury Hannigan has been doing some great stuff in this area. Um,
Mm.
but it certainly is a problem, and I can't wait to hear from the experts.
Yeah, well, I think we've got some experts here in the sense they've been victims of fraud nearly, right? So it's like no one's truly an expert. We're all just people like encountering these episodes, and I guess we're learning from those. So that's really important for us to review. But we've got some folks on screen here, so let's see whether we can say hello. Firstly, Bettina, wonderful to see you. It's been a long while. Great to see you back on the show. Can you quickly introduce yourself? Who are you? What it is you do?
For sure. Hi, Hung. Nice to see you again after so long. I think it was 2 years. I was living in Europe back then. Now I'm in Argentina, my
Yes.
home country. Um, hi, everybody. My name is Bettina. I'm a recruiter. I've been recruiting for a long time now. I've worked in-house. I've worked in agencies. I've had my own recruitment agency for a couple of years. Yeah, that's pretty much. And yeah, I guess another victim trying to figure out what to do in this new world we're living in, which is crazy.
Yeah, and you've got one of the great examples. So we'll dive to you straight away after you've done the intros here, Bettina. But great to see you here and with us. Boris, wonderful to see you as well, sir. Can you quickly introduce yourself, who are you, what it is you do?
Hey everybody, thank you so much for having me, Hung. Appreciate it. My name is Boris. I am the principal TA partner here at Dataminer. I've been here about 7 years. Been about in the industry about 15 years. I've helped. Dataminer is the leading information discovery platform for cyber risks, for physical risks that ingests and processes data from over 1.5 million different sources. So I've been here 7 years, helped them build out their AI product engineering teams over that time, and I can't wait to give you some info of what I've seen.
Yeah,
Back to you,
fantastic.
Hong. Thank you.
Great stuff. Welcome, Boris. And we have Steph as well. Steph Tomlin, great to see you. Can you quickly introduce yourself? Who are you? What is you do?
Yeah, hi. Thank you for having me as well. So I'm Steph. I'm a fractional head of people for startups, and I basically help people team be more effective as they're scaling.
Fantastic stuff. Great to have you join as well, Steph. Finally, last but not least, we have Ben Ritchie here as well. Ben, great to see you. Can you quickly introduce yourself? Who are you? What it is you do?
Yeah, thanks, Hung. Great to meet everyone. So I'm a sort of serial entrepreneur, CTO of sort of Series A, Series B startups, and I've had the unfortunate responsibility of doing near and offshore hiring for a number of years. And along the way, I've had various kind of interesting experiences, which we'll get into later.
Fantastic stuff. So we've got a big sort of basically people who've got direct experience of some of this stuff. So let's kick off with you, Bettina, because it was actually one of your viral posts that the post that did go viral a couple of weeks ago, didn't it? And I wonder whether you could tell us that story and share with the crowd what that scenario was.
Yeah, story time. It was just a normal day. I received a couple messages, as I usually do. I'm like, hey, like I'm unemployed. Can we have a conversation and whatnot? I usually like to jump on proactive interviews. I think it's a great way to like meet talent, even if you're not like actively hiring at the time. So I received a couple messages. One of those is from this candidate, and they sent me a really 100% AI generated message, which could be suspicious, but at the same time, everybody's doing the same thing. Like we see content being posted every day that's AI generated, 100%. So I was like, okay, I mean, I guess they're struggling with like job hunting. I'll have a conversation. And when I'm in the video call, they come in without the camera on, and then they say, oh, okay, let me just come back, and they leave. And then they jump again on the call without the camera on, and they tell me the camera is broken, to which I say, I'm sorry, we need to have cameras on. It's a policy we have. We are a fully remote company, so we cannot like interview people without cameras on. And they say, okay, let me just restart my laptop or not. In the meantime, Google kept warning me that this person was joining without their email address. So they were joining from incognito or like, without providing an email address. The third time they joined the call, they say, okay, I fixed my camera. And what you see on the video, if you haven't seen it on the post, it was basically a deep fake. It was absolutely fake, a fake appearance. They turn on the camera that they were using. It's like some kind of mask created by AI. And that's when I totally noticed it was definitely a fake person joining the call. I wasn't even sure their voice was the real one. Clearly their name, email address, and LinkedIn profile was all fake. I started to look at the patterns later on, and everything was definitely fake. And what I did was I asked them to wave a hand in front of their face like this, because that's where the filters can struggle. And they tell me like, well, should I join again? No, you don't need to join again. Just simply if you can wave your hand in front of your face. And they just disappeared and blocked me on LinkedIn, which was really bad as well. So yeah, that's what happened.
Very interesting. And you actually have a recording of this episode, don't you, Bettina? So obviously you had some sort of like video recording, and that's normal these days that most videos are recorded. And basically you captured some of this activity, and you've got it for posterity, which is crazy stuff. I wonder whether we could actually share this. It might be quite interesting for us to have a look at. Ben actually has already shared it into the chat stream there, so folks might want to look into the link. But actually, I wonder whether, Bettina, you want to fire this up. Let's see whether we show people what this looks like. Maybe I can do it as well, actually. Let me just see. People who haven't seen this, I think they should, because it is one of those that is so sort of bizarre that it's. I do see the video. Let me see if I can just share screen on this. So I'm going to share screen, folks. Let's see whether.
Bettina, did you? I mean, I honestly, having seen the video, I felt like a little bit scared, and I felt a little bit like if I was the interviewer, I would feel a little bit like almost, I'd feel creeped out at minimum and scared potentially as well. What about you?
I'll be very honest. Right now, I'm telling the story. It went totally viral. I've been talking about this long enough to like treat it as normal by now. Back then, the moment they dropped off the call, and even when I saw that fake image that you see right now, I was shaking. It was very disturbing. It's not fun to suddenly figure out you're talking to somebody who's literally wearing a mask and they don't want to tell you who they are, where they're from, what they look like. And you're actually showing your real face, your real voice, your real identity to them. But the worst part was a couple hours later, I showed the video to my dad and I said, hey, Dad, look at what happened to me. He said, what? What's wrong with that? He doesn't speak English, but anyway, he was like, what's wrong with that? Can't you see something weird about his face? No, not really. And even if he did, I mean, he wouldn't be showing you his house like that, right? And that's when I noticed, wow, this is much bigger than we actually, because right now we understand backgrounds in video calls, that we work with video calls, but people who don't have video calls on a normal day, my dad has a shop, like he doesn't really use video calls or whatever. This is like very dangerous, not only recruiting, it's just really dangerous.
Yeah, beyond recruiting. Bettina, I'm going to try and play this. I don't think the sound's going to come through, but I just want to see how that video looks.
Oh, yes, yes. Hello, can you hear me?
Hi, I can hear you.
Nice, finally.
Would you mind doing this with your hand in front of your face, please?
Give me 1 minute. Let me try. Seems like. Can I join again?
You don't need to join again. No. You just, if you can do this with your hand in front of your face, like I'm doing.
And then he drops off. How interesting. Yeah. Okay, stop sharing on that. Super interesting, folks. And also, I agree, very scary. It's disturbing. And actually, Patina, your analysis as to why you were disturbed did educate me a little bit there, because you were showing your true face. They weren't showing their true face. And that discrepancy there, that lack of reciprocity straight away is very, very disturbing, and heads into that sort of deeply immoral thing. When we talk about fraud, by the way, we're starting to, I think, develop some understanding as what the distinction is between like a fair usage of AI and what is fraudulent. I don't think it's entirely clear, but one of them surely is the lack of reciprocity, right? In a sense, someone's like literally pretending to be someone else. How very strange. Okay, why did this guy do this? Any thoughts on this? I mean, Bettina, get your thoughts, but I want to get other people's ideas on this. Like, did the guy actually legit try to get the job? Is that your interpretation, or was there some other reason why this would be, you know, what's he trying to achieve here?
You know, I'm not sure about this one, and I'm not saying, again, it can be so many different reasons, but if you read a bit like in the news, and there's so many articles going on around this right now, it can be ransom, extortion. For example, I work for letsmake.com. We build software for companies. We handle client data. We get into their products. We build products people are going to be using, people are going to be adding their credit cards on. A person coming in that has a fake identity, they could tell us, hey, now I have all your information. If you don't pay me X amount, I'm going to steal your client data. I'm going to install some malware, whatever that is. So it can be as bad as that. It can be access to certain data, intellectual property theft. It can be brand damage, simply. It can be so many things. Or even payroll fraud. Like they get different salaries from different companies that never really notice. They're working for 10 companies at a time. And God knows what they use those funds for.
Yeah, if I can chime in here, yeah, for 2 years I thought I was going crazy because of this constantly happening, and this started for me. This started like 2021. Dataminer was just closed the Series F. We were going from, we're trying to grow our engineering team from 80 to 200 people. We were interviewing pretty much anybody with a pulse and a resume, and like back then we started getting some kind of suspicious looking profiles, right? So at first they look fairly like good resumes, and then you dig in a little bit and just small things don't match up, like their email address is misspelled, their LinkedIn profile says something a little bit different than their resume does. And at first, my first thought, because I'm a bit paranoid as a person, my first thought was like, these are spies trying to infiltrate Dataminer, because we have government clients, and like these are spies, right? So, and I was like worried about telling my colleagues and friends this, because I was like, people are gonna think I'm crazy. And then lo and behold, 2 years later, FBI put out a report saying North Korea and some Russian, actors are trying to infiltrate U.S. companies because they're trying to get funding for their nuclear program in North Korea, right? And so like there was extensive reports of these North Korean hackers or engineers, whatever you want to call them, trying to get into U.S. companies for whatever reasons. And when I first saw that, like I felt so validated. It was like good to see that I wasn't going crazy. But 100% agree with you. Like I haven't had any cases as bad as Bettina, where they were using fake filters or anything like that just yet. I'm sure I'm going to come across it soon enough. But I have asked people to, once after I saw your post, Bettina, I've been asking some of the candidates to wave their hands in front of their face, because, and some of them laughingly do it. Some of them ask like, why? And I literally send them a link to your profile, and I'm like, look, unfortunately, we're in a remote world right now, and there's very few kind of ways to verify who you really are. And I actually, before that even happened, like, I know we're going to talk about mitigation strategies a little bit later, but I've tried to ask people to show their ID, like live ID, but that's also not foolproof, because some of them have shown me IDs that are, 99% chance are fake, but they have them printed, they're ready to show them. Most of the time, there's no way to track them, even if you try to do like an IP or a digital signature, because they have laptop farms in various countries spoofing their locations. I mean, this is a huge, huge problem for the industry right now.
Yeah, I mean, I want to talk about the scale of the problem, but mitigation strategy number one we've talked about already is like do that right in front of the camera, because it seems that some of the deep fake tech is going to be interfered with if there's something coming across the face that they're overlaying, something of that nature. So we're getting to some idea of some basic mitigations, but also some patterns, right? So if you're looking at emails that don't quite match up, or resume sort of that don't match with the LinkedIn, it's all about whether it just falls out of sync with some other stuff that's out there. It might be a good sign, even though you can imagine in due course it shouldn't be that difficult to start being efficiently syncing those things as you go job to job, right? So the practical impediment of having to do that for every job might stop a lot of people, but again, with these days with AI enabled deep fakers, they could probably be able to personalize LinkedIn fairly rapidly. So it's not a particularly strong defense. Ben, I'm bringing you in on the tech side because you chimed in and some of the dialogue we had online on this, and you said actually similar to Boris that you've actually seen this yourself as a hiring manager. What have you seen, and what kind of things, what kind of behaviors or new techniques that you've seen emerge in this AI era?
Yeah, I mean, obviously, because I do a lot of offshore, nearshore hiring, there's a lot of like geo arbitrage, right? Like, because there's a big salary difference internationally. Once you go fully remote first, arguably, does it really matter where you are? I think there's certain regulated industries that have requirements about where the candidates are based, and you need to think about which jurisdictions make sense. But for me personally, I'm quite international minded in hiring. So the story I have is, I was interviewing a remote developer from Europe during COVID. So we're all remote in that regard. And during the interview, they were starting to have language difficulties. So I decided to do some due diligence while I was on the call. And much like Steph just mentioned in the comments here, a good mitigation strategy can be to do a reverse image search on the profile pic. So yeah, I tried that while we were on the call. And sure enough, in the Google search results, it actually yielded a different name and a different person on LinkedIn. I've tried to do that more recently, and it feels like they might be starting to restrict that in Europe. Maybe GDPR or whatever. They don't want to index people's faces to names, so that technique might be starting to see challenges. But the way the story ended was, based on the accent and the people in the background, felt like they might have been in China instead of in Europe, which wouldn't have been a problem, right? I'm internationally hiring. They didn't need to necessarily deceive, but they obviously felt like there was an opportunity to command a better salary through the European jurisdiction. So I challenged them on it, and they immediately ended the call, just like in Patina's video. So I did follow up and reach out to the person that was being impersonated, and shared the LinkedIn profile and CV details of the person impersonating. Yeah, so effectively in LinkedIn there were two people with the same LinkedIn profile image.
But look, Ben, the most important thing I want to know is, did you get to hire the person who was being impersonated?
Well, they weren't a developer, so no.
Just a random person. No,
just very handsome.
It's very interesting. On this note, it's actually quite interesting because obviously the shift to remote has opened the aperture, so to say, for more fraud to happen. I mean, all of us are pro-remote. We're all working kind of in places that don't seem to be offices right now. So we've all benefited from this, but we can also understand that it's actually increased the surface area of risk for an employer, because suddenly, yes, there's going to be really motivated people, motivated for good and bad reasons, by the way. There's going to be bad actors that want to do malicious stuff, or they just could be highly motivated job seekers that want to earn a bit of extra money, but they're still moving down a road that is fraudulent. And what do we do about that? Like, do we roll remote back? I mean, is this actually a very strong argument against remote if we don't find a solution to this? It's going to be hard to argue against RTO, isn't it? It's going to be like, yeah, guys, we have to do it because otherwise we're going to put a company at risk.
Yeah, I mean, I think, just a connected story for me, I think, which will lead to potentially clue of the direction we can go is on April the 1st, I wound up my work at a previous startup and was looking for new work. Didn't really fancy the open to work banner. We could get into a whole debate about that on another Brainfood, but decided to do an April the 1st prank where I declared myself the CTO of LinkedIn and then shared a post widely on LinkedIn that I was CTO of LinkedIn. Now that's clearly not great, right? What kind of system is this where I can declare myself CTO of the system? But there are features within it I later discovered that let you verify. So you could use your domain, your email address to sort of prove that you are that person. And perhaps, LinkedIn isn't monetarily motivated right now to enforce some of those features. And you've got Infido, right, and other startups that specialize in identity verification with driver's license and other things. So perhaps there's kind of a community pressure we can apply collectively to make this hurt LinkedIn's bottom line and therefore make them care about this. Because right now, it doesn't seem to be affecting their sales.
All right, quick one to the audience. There is a verified ID on LinkedIn. Now, of all of the recruiters that are on this call right now, is there a way to search and filter against only verified profiles? I mean, I'm sure there should be, but are you aware of this? And does it actually exist? Like, can I just say, right, I'm searching for X amount of person in this area, only verified profiles only? Does that filter exist? Let me know in the comments. Adam, you're desperate to say something. Go ahead.
Even I wouldn't say desperate. I'd say I'm gonna say something, but like even if it does exist, you're gonna miss out on masses of people who just haven't clicked that button. So you're kind of not gonna win anyway. I haven't been able to. Like, they keep telling me, why don't you verify yourself so everybody knows you're real? And like, it doesn't recognize my passport. It just doesn't recognize my passport or driving license. The technology they're using isn't very good. So
yeah, you're right on this. I haven't. Go ahead.
Yeah, sorry. So just we actually looked into this because we did some demos with Persona and Identify and a couple others that do like merchant verification. So if you want to join like Amazon or Wayfair or whatever as a merchant, you have to go through this process of uploading your ID documents and things like that. And we went down and like did the demos with them and asked them how they do the verification process. And so they just have these proprietary algorithms that will match the document that you're uploading or taking a screenshot of to what they think this document should look like. And some of them claim they have like, 1,000 different templates and formats that they have collected and they can verify it against. But when you ask them, like, do you actually then check against a government database that the ID on the document matches up the name? None of them do that. None of them have access to the actual government information. And I mean, that's probably a good thing overall. But just to say, like, it's not foolproof. Those systems are still not foolproof.
Yeah, and we've got some reports in the chat here. Sorry, we've got some reports in the chat here that says it's actually based on like basic visual like compatibility. Like South Africa, they've got a different ID type or passport type. LinkedIn don't recognize it. So obviously flawed. And a potential opportunity for some service to emerge. And thank you, Bill Fisher, for the blockchain solution. Of course, blockchain solves this. Right, Ben, go ahead. You about to say something?
Well, just that it's a solved problem, right? KYC, for banking, there are various solutions that are probably more robust than that sort of more of a KYB B2B solution. But yeah, like I agree, they are flawed, but some of them are a little bit more sophisticated, do have database access to government records in some territories, but when you're doing obscure territories, it all starts to fall apart.
Yeah,
I'm not calling South Africa. Yeah, I'm not calling South Africa obscure. Sorry.
No, Steph, I want to bring you on this because I'm just thinking, okay, what absent technical solutions, what should a recruiter be doing? Like, should we be demanding ID, like show the ID in front of camera? Is that one of the like rather unpleasant ways to do it? Like, what do we do, or is there anything we can do in a non-tech way?
I think as a recruiter, you have to be diligent or aware and careful. So that's the organization has a duty to train its recruiters and explain to them, well, this is what you need to look out for. And when you get to the offer stage, before making the offer, you need to check the ID of the person. All of the the majority of the startups I work with now use ID verification, especially if they are international. So there are plenty of systems where you send a link to the person, the organization do the ID check, background check. If you need to do what is called criminal check, and like you said, Ben, KYC, but for people, and make sure that you are the way it's titled in the law is proper. You are hiring a proper person. And yes, there are ways, like I think it's Mika who was saying they're interviewing for their mates. We had that when I was at DGS. We ended up we hired someone, and that person outsourced their work to somebody else because they had two jobs. Right. So they attended meetings with us up until one day, or one of our cybersec guys was in the meeting with that person. They noticed that there was screen sharing with somebody else, and checking the logs and everything, they worked out that actually they had the company laptop open. Somebody else was doing their job, and they were doing something else.
Wow. So that was really happenstance. The fact that there was a cybersecurity expert happened to just eyeball that screen. But theoretically, that could have just continued going further forward. Not an unusual story, folks. I mean, this type of fraudulent behavior, you want to go on Reddit and look at the Reddit subreddit Overworking. And there's a whole community that's dedicated to actually doing this. I actually know people that in my personal life that have done this. And you know, it's obviously fraudulent. And I've had debates with those folks, not to say I'm judging in any way, shape, or form, but people have basically felt that they feel that they don't feel that they should obey the contract that they've signed, essentially. Because within your contract, it will tell you cannot be working for another company and not declare it. But they don't respect that. They think it's a possible sort of window of opportunity to max out earnings. You can imagine in the sort of in that 2021 peak, at the peak you mentioned, Boris, where every engineer, anybody get a job. Guess what? What if you had 2 or 3 of those jobs? Probably your exit from the wage sort of economy is going to be shortened significantly if you could crack that particular nut. So the motivations are there, the incentives are there, and unfortunately the behavior is now there as well, and the technology is there as well. So difficult for us to fix. Okay, quick question for the crowd. Have you got a background or fraud checking solution in place, folks? How are you doing this? It's okay to say no, but do you have one? Yes, no. Let me know in the comments, because here's another thing I think we need to be aware of as recruiters. If we do end up hiring someone that ends up being a fraudulent person or doing things that are fraudulent, guess who's responsible for that? This will not be the hiring manager, folks. You know what I mean? It's going to be us. It really is. And who else is responsible for this? We have to get this right, because I think if we don't, it's going to be our guts for garters, really. Okay, let's think about some of the techniques that we're aware of. We've had deep fakes, obviously fake CV, fake stuff like that. We've had people possibly interviewing for their mates. I think that's quite common in many parts of the world, actually. Where you've got basically a great closer. You can go in and close the interview. Someone else comes in, does the job. So all this type of crazy stuff goes on. Any other techniques we need to be aware of and raise awareness of that we want to share with the crowd here? Go on, Ben.
All right, quick one. Yeah, just really sort of interesting project called Interview Coder, which has come onto my radar the last couple of days, where it's growing massively, and it's an overlay that sits on top of the video screen, so you maintain eye contact with the camera. It doesn't look like you're looking at anything. It can take screenshots of programming quiz questions and then feed that off to an LLM, come back with answers on screen overlaid, and help you kind of prepare, answer live. This stuff's only going to get more sophisticated, right? And it's already very sophisticated. That's a desktop application for Windows and Mac. The question is, what's faking at this point as well, right? Like, if AI is an integrated part of our lives, like, is that fake candidate or not fake? Like, do we need to change the way we interview? Think about identity itself. Like, should we be more interested in outputs than how we got there, and outcomes rather? So yeah, I'll leave it there. But there's some very cool tools coming out.
Actually,
sorry, Bettina.
Steph, go ahead. Yeah, don't worry.
Yeah, I agree with you, Ben, and that's why I much prefer, instead of doing standard interviews, I prefer doing skill-based interviews, which is, I don't want to see your CV. I don't care about your face, but you will have a set of questions to test that represent the role, and you have to answer those questions. And if you think about it, it's a bit like at the very beginning of Wikipedia. Students were using Wikipedia for essays, and the teachers were saying you can't be doing that. And now teachers are saying you go to Wikipedia, get your ideas, and write your essay. Don't copy paste, because that's stupid. But get your ideas and get your knowledge. And I see the way things are going to change is AI is part of the way we work. You have to know how to use AI. So that's what you were saying at the beginning, is I need to know how to craft a prompt, and I need to know how to do the job to be most efficient at my job. And we need to have a balance of both. So it kind of, what are your skill sets, and then make the human skills, what we call the soft skills now, much more important, because we need to be able to connect and interact with people, and then the technical can be taken care of via tech, because it does that much better than we do.
A couple of companies ago, I was fortunate enough, right now I feel that's super, super helpful, but I was fortunate enough to work very closely with the anti-fraud team. It was a tech company, we had users, and I was able to learn a lot about how to identify patterns and find fraudulent activity, right? And I was what Boris was saying at the beginning, that he's paranoid right now and that he doesn't trust anybody very, very much, right? And everybody could be a deep fake. That's so true. Ever since what happened to me, I'm finding myself not trusting, which is horrible, because I usually trust people as the first thing. That's what I do. But a couple of things that have helped me on the sourcing: very careful sourcing. The old contact 100 people bulk and see who answers, and then we jump on it. That's not useful anymore. Half of those are going to be fake profiles. LinkedIn is packed with fake profiles, and even fake companies that have fake employees. Those companies that have been forever in the market, and in the last 2 years, they never lost or any employee, or they never hired anybody, and all the employees have been there for 15 years. Those are all fake accounts, fake companies, and you can see the patterns. You can see, for example, some fake profiles. They connect with each other, and then they assess their own skills, and then they recommend each other, and they work in the same companies, but like in a different order. That's how you start looking at the patterns. And then on the interviews, what has helped me a lot is using AI for my own note-taking and transcript of interviews. I record all the interviews. Candidates are very well aware of that, and they approve that. Active listening. It's never been more important to practice active listening. It's always been part of our job, but not many people understood how important that was. And maybe when we were taking notes and listening to what other person is saying, it's really hard to actively listen to what they're saying. Right now, it's so important. You can follow up with the right questions. And even interrupt. I've had so many candidates who were clearly using AI to provide the answers. They were looking at me, and they looking to one side, and they were just literally reading the answers. Interrupting those people with follow-up questions like, hey, you just said that. What do you mean with that? That really confuses the machines, and it confuses the candidates as well, because they aren't able to follow. Those things are super important right now. It's key.
Okay, so some really interesting points I just want to underline there from Bettina. If the person's using AI surreptitiously, second screen, looking at the phone or whatever it is, and even with the technology you suggested, Ben, where they could kind of generate the answer on the fly, which, by the way, is very, very fast these days. There's not a huge amount of latency. But if you spot something that's difficult, you might just want to hit them with some rapid fire questions, and basically go deeper, because that's going to really stress the ability of the AI to keep up. particularly if they're not declaring their usage of the AI. So the person's got to fake it on screen whilst they're manipulating a second screen. I think that's quite hard to do. So
there is
some
already
techniques that might...
There is already software that gets into the video call and they listen to the recruiter and they provide the answers exactly as the candidate should. They say like, okay, give me your resume so that I know what your experience looks like. You can provide a fake resume and the machine is going to come up with great answers based on your own experience. That's actually all fake. It's on YouTube. They're promoting it already, like the great new software that helps you nail job interviews.
Yeah. So just to chime in on that, Hong, if you don't mind. 100%, like all these tools exist, and the first and foremost thing that you should all do as recruiters is host the training session, 30, 45 minutes with all your interviewers, all your hiring managers. Show them these videos of what this software can do. Now, this is kind of like a double-edged sword, because then some of the interviewers go on the defensive, and now anytime somebody even peeks at a second screen off camera, all of a sudden they might be cheating and they're getting a no. So I had one of our interviewers, they noticed the Otter AI join the call with one of their candidates, and Otter, pretty harmless, right? Just takes notes on whatever's being said in the video call, but they flagged that as potential cheating tool, and so we decided to pass on the candidate. But the big implications of this, right? So Ben, you posted interviewcoder.co. Like I heard his podcast with the New York Times, and this is like a student at Columbia who was fed up with coding interviews, and so he put together this software. But in the grand scheme of things, where we are trying to protect our companies from notorious actors, foreign agents and things like that, like a tool like that is just going to make their job easier, because they can now fly through the interviews with ease, and it's going to be that much harder for us to distinguish real candidates from these notorious bad actors.
Before I let you come in, Patina, I just want to say, is this the end of the video interview, folks? Like, can we no longer trust it? I think we already know we can't trust the asynchronous video, right? I mean, there was a period you send something else in and they send it back. Like, you can't trust that. We know that's the case. I thought that we would have a longer period of time where the video, one-to-one synchronous video, we could trust. But it seems to me that I don't think we can. I mean,
yeah, you mentioned this already, but this is going to expedite RTO. It's going to expedite in-person, coming back for in-person interviews. The only thing that's holding us back from asking people to come to our New York office to do coding interviews or like technical interviews with hiring manager is the cost, right? Flying somebody from San Francisco to New York and putting them up in a hotel for a night, like, is just not in the budget right now. But if this continues and we're spending 10 hours a week of interviewer time interviewing potentially fake candidates or fraudulent candidates, that it might make more sense to just fly some folks in to make sure that they're real.
I don't think it is. I'm part of a remote company. I mean, I'm never going to say it's the end. I love remote work. I've been doing it for a long time. I think it's a time where you actually have to start interviewing smartly. You have to be updated. Like I'm literally every single day figuring out what's new in the market, what advancements there have been in technology. I don't know if you've heard, but recently a student from Colombia was suspended because he was able to pass through the whole Amazon tech process, tech assessment process with a tool he built.
I think Stephen just shared it in the chat there, and I believe it might have been referenced earlier. I think that guy deliberately set up a company, though. I mean, reading a bit of the history of this, I don't think he was ever seriously a fraud. He basically wanted to be a startup guy. But anyway, it's a good point. He's flown through it. The question I've got to ask here is, as selfishly as recruiters, should we not be arguing for like changes in KPIs, time to hire, all that type of stuff, if the company insists on high bar in terms of quality control, fraud management, fraud mitigation? Because this is going to take time. If you're being told, hey, listen, all this AI is going to help you hire all these candidates, going to fly through it, I think, yeah, we can say, yes, we can. But boss, how many layers of security do you want on this? Because if you want to make absolutely sure there's no fraudulent candidates, actually, we're going to have to take another 10 days on this time to hire metric, because this is the effort that's going to be required to validate these candidates. Has anyone made that conversation? Is that right? Yes, no? I mean, is this making sense? Asking you guys in the panel, anybody who's watching, chime in on the chat.
I think the KPIs are going to change and should change as well. And there is no, I was going to say something stupid, so I'll just stop here.
Oh my God, we definitely want to hear you say something stupid, Steph.
That's how you know she's not using AI. That's exactly how
I was saying I can see a world where you get a KPI that says the number of deepfake you caught, right?
Yeah,
but it could be a percentage, but I don't think it could be a KPI. Like it can be something you track as a matter of interest, but I don't think it could be an actual KPI for someone.
You know what I'm tracking?
In the US, yeah. Oh, sorry, go ahead, Bettina. You go first.
No, that's just very quick. But what I'm tracking a lot is quality of sourcing in terms of how many people I've sourced, answer to me, interview with me, and they're good candidates. And that's how I know if I'm doing a good job, because at the end of the day, it's all on the sourcing. Unfortunately, applications, literally 50% of those are fake. The rest, they can be good or not, but then it's on the sourcing. That's what I feel.
Boris, I'm going to let you come in here for a sec, because Bettina's mentioned something I just want to touch on. Does it change talent acquisition strategy? Because if the advert is going to attract, we already attracting tons of volume, probably highly motivated real candidates, but increasingly more fake candidates or increasingly more AI-enabled candidates, does it get to the point where it actually makes no sense to advertise, and we go back to being more like headhunters, because we can't actually physically manage the effort? Anyway, Boris, go ahead.
We've thought that. I mean, just to respond to that, right? So we've tried to think of ways, right? One of the first defenses was like screening questions, right? Like candidates hate filling out additional things, but if we can put in a box question where candidates need to respond of like why you're interested in joining Dataminer, or like what your experience, summarize your experience, something like that. Well, let me tell you, JobHire.ai and EasyApply have made those obsolete. So there's, because they are now using generative AI LLMs to just fill out those questions and respond to those questions. And I had one where we require a PhD, and one of the screening questions was like, do you have a PhD? And we specifically didn't make it multiple choice. And of course, the LLM that was filling out the application said, you did not mention a PhD in your resume, so we don't know what to put in here. So, I mean, they're not foolproof, but those, generative AI is going to make this a lot harder. Back to you, Hong.
Yeah, I mean, I'm kind of speechless. I'm thinking about, look, do we have? Someone mentioned a proctored sort of interview service. So instead of flying people around, why don't you have a WeWork style scenario? 100 offices, big cities. You just have policed interviews, I guess. I mean, is that a viable way of doing things? Perhaps. It's like, okay, guys, you've got through the second, third interview. You got to go in for an in-person to your local office so we could do ID check. It feels like police state type stuff. But I mean, what other options are we talking about here?
That could actually be business. Sorry. Go
on. Number one, like I said, make your hiring manager interviewers aware, right? You have to do that. Number two, and this worked for a while. I'm not sure if it still works, but the only way that I've been able to detect fake LinkedIn profiles is if you go into their LinkedIn creation date on their profile and see when the profile was created. If it's any time in the last 4 to 6 months and they claim to have 15 years of experience in the industry, most likely that profile is fake. To respond to what Steph was saying, like tracking candidates who are disingenuous or fake, whatever you want to call them, that creates a legal issue, right? Because you flag somebody who is a genuine candidate, but you have a red flag and you mark them as fake, and then they decide to use GDPR or whatever local laws are to look, to get the data out of your system and through a legal process, and then they can claim unfair hiring practices. So you really have to be careful with marking candidates as fake or disingenuous, especially in the US, because that could cause a huge legal problem for you in the company.
This should also, I wonder whether there's a big space for recruitment agencies to come back into the fore. If they're able to provide some sort of securitized validation service, you push the responsibility of that label away from the business, and the third party absorbs the risk of that. So yeah, maybe there's a recruitment agency sort of revival as a result of it. Okay, cool. We're coming to the end of this, and Jason, I'm going to bring you on in a sec. But before we leave our guests here, I want our guests to have a think about sort of some recommendations you would make to people listening into this call and feeling, oh my goodness, I've got nothing in terms of my own sort of system to protect my business. What would you advise them to do? Like, what kind of lo-fi technique should they be employing right now that makes sense? Ben, let's start with you on this. You got any thoughts? What would you implement if you had a job, so a new job, and you thought, right, we've got to sort the security out, number one, on candidate hiring?
Yeah, I mean, I haven't used it personally, but there's a lot of comments on the side that I wanted to call out for Hire Tofu. There's at least 2 people here saying they're using Hire Tofu successfully. So can't vouch for it, but that's worth calling out. For me, the reverse image search on Profile Pic was a good one. That does seem to be seeing challenges now. Please do try it. Let me know how you get on. And then, I think for me, probably, if you don't really need someone to be in a given geography, just maybe talk to that candidate, give them a chance to be honest as well. Because if they've got talent and they're international and it doesn't bother you, like, maybe just use that talent. Anyway, that's a bit out there, but I'm sort of, I think we're in a kind of post-reality world where people representing themselves with avatars, people using AI to augment their capabilities is the future, frankly. And I know that's a bit futuristic and out there, and I know some of you deal with compliance issues and genuine enterprise problems. But for me as a startup, I'm pretty open-minded about this stuff.
No, some really good tips there as well. And we are definitely entering into a world of changing values. Technology changes culture, culture will change values. So all of the things we're talking about today, which might outrage some of us, this may be normal behavior in 2 years' time. Who knows? Okay, Steph, let's go to you. Mitigation strategy. What would you do? What have you advised? Actually, your job is to kind of do this, isn't it? To tell companies how to do better. So, what kind of advice do you stick to and think is useful for businesses?
So do the ID checks, and as I said, I'm going more and more towards the skill-based hiring. So ditching the CV, ditching the LinkedIn profile. If you can answer those questions effectively, then we'll give you an interview, and then during the interview, we'll drill down those. As we said, that comes with challenges as well. The more I interview, the keener I am also to hire for attitude. So as Ben said, if the person has a good attitude, why shouldn't I hire them rather than hire for skills? Because you can train for skills.
No, really good point. Like the CV and profile getting degraded, right? So maybe we redesign the recruitment process that actually removes that from the frame, so that at least there's a kind of an area of potential exploitation we take off the table. So perhaps that's one way of doing it. Maybe the same with interviews as well. A lot of the fraud is occurring at interviews. So is there a way we could do an assessment, let's say, that is a little bit more foolproof? Let's explore that. Patina, your view?
Okay, a couple of things. First of all, keep updated on anything that's going on in the market. Maybe subscribe to 2 or 3 newsletters that you trust on recruiting and on tech. To make sure that you're updated and you hear what's happening around, right? That first. And then when it comes to sourcing, interviewing, and so, I would say definitely active listening. Definitely choose questions that go into the candidate's experience. Follow up on those questions. If you keep questions too structured and even open-ended, that's very easy for AI to just provide the answers. So make sure you do that. And revisit your assessments all the time. Constantly check whether there's anything that could be cheated on. And finally, success profiles. I've implemented success profiles at letsmake.com, and to be honest, that helps a lot because it keeps very concise what we're looking for in a candidate, and every single person in the pipeline is going to be assessing exactly the same. And that's how you find patterns, or even maybe the candidate said something on one interview and then said exactly the opposite on the other one. That means they could potentially have used AI to write that answer. So those, I would say, in a nutshell.
No, very good, and great that you're thinking about this in depth, Bettina. I think there's something that you could definitely help other people with as you deepen your knowledge on how to mitigate. Boris, what are your thoughts? What's your tips for people listening into this?
I mean, I know I'm going to sound like repeating myself again, but definitely build a training on fake candidates, fake applicants, let your interviewers and your hiring managers know what they should be looking out for, what the red, yellow, orange flags might be throughout the process, but also make sure they understand that it's not an easy solution, and we should, just because somebody's looking at a second screen doesn't mean automatically that they're cheating in the process. Two, there are some create an AI interview policy for your company, for your agency or your company, whatever it is. Like, we had to work with our legal team to create one that we've added to our career site, to our job descriptions, to just say, like, we want to meet your true self. Please avoid using any AI assisted tools. And that's just protecting yourself, because then when you reject somebody for using those tools legally, you have a reason for why you're rejecting them, because it's going against your policy, and it's also a deterrent. And then number three, screening questions, like I said, sometimes they work, sometimes they don't. But it's good to have them as another point of another check in the process. And in case my cyber security team at Dataminer is listening, the last and nuclear option should be bringing people back into the office for interviews. We should absolutely think 100 times before we and rethink 100 times before we go to that.
No, but I think that's, it's going to change the shape of companies, is the truth of it. Because the amount of effort it takes to actually interview and then commit someone to to interview in person and also actually work in person, that's going to be such a high amount of effort now that we're not going to do that many of them. You talk about your... Go ahead.
Just one more thing, Hung. So Jason Zoltak is here from Tofu, and he's I actually had a couple conversations with him. He's a great guy, and he's built this tool. And we did a demo, and we're trying to figure it out. I'm hoping that more people look into the tool, and somebody else goes first into trying to integrate it with Workday, because we don't want to be the first to try to integrate something like that with Workday.
Please,
but
the gods.
We're looking into it. We are evaluating it, Jason. If you're listening, I want you to know that we will get back to you. But the other issue is that some of the localities, like New York City, are putting together policies against using AI in the hiring process. So if you're using an AI enabled tool like Tofu, there are some hoops to jump through trying to prove that it's not the decision maker in the hiring process, based on the local laws. And again, that can cause some legal trouble for whatever company is using those tools. So I just wanted to mention that, and hopefully this was informative for everybody. Back to you, Hung.
I'm sure it is. Jason, I'm going to bring him on screen, actually, because I messaged him just before we came live to say, listen, can you share some sort of insight as to the state of the fraudulent marketplace? So I'm going to go ahead and do that. But before I do that, I'm going to have to move people off screen. So I hope that's okay. Ben Ritchie, thanks for joining us, sir. Steph Tommen, great to see you as well. Bettina, I think it's Liparazzi, wasn't it? Great to see you, Bettina. I'll see you soon, hopefully. And Boris, thanks for joining. Great to see you here. And thanks for your insights on this. Jason, I'm going to bring you on here. Let's have a quick chit chat with you. Folks, I know we're kind of running over time, but I think it might be worthwhile just hanging around to get the state of the market kind of verdict here, because I want to just understand exactly what kinds of fraudulent behavior we can see. Ms., I just want to address your point, embrace it, use it. I agree we should embrace people who are AI enabled, absolutely. I think the line is drawn basically on fraudulent behavior, like what is actually people trying to pretend who they're not and stuff like this. We probably don't want this. But yeah, it's definitely something we're trying to figure out. Jason, great to see you. Thanks for jumping on late notice. You had a load of great comments about your business in the chat. So wonderful that you've hit a sweet spot here. Why don't you quickly introduce yourself? Who are you? What it is you do, sir?
Yeah, thank you, Hung. So everybody, I'm Jason. I'm one of the co-founders of a company called Tofu. We're building AI agents for recruiting. And we came onto this topic probably like 9 months ago because we've built an AI interviewer, well, an AI resume screener. And one of the conversations that kept coming up with our customers is that, it's great for me to be able to rank people and, get good insights on who's a really great candidate. But the really good candidates that are moving to the top are actually fake. And there's perfectly written resumes. They have stellar backgrounds. And that became really hard to discern as to whether or not who's real. And so we decided to look into it, and we've spent months on the topic. Honestly, I think becoming like experts in I wouldn't say experts, but becoming very well versed in all the different ways that this could happen. We have 250 companies on our platform, so we have a good amount of information and data on what to look for. And we've been working really closely with a few TA leaders to build out, kind of like a first principles way of thinking about this. And it's been interesting to see how it evolves.
What are the main ways in which you've detected fraud, Jace?
So the biggest thing that I've come to learn is the internet. Like, we all leave a digital trail, whether we like it or not. I really liked what Ben brought up, which is reverse engineering the image and just dropping it into Google and seeing what it populates. But what we've found to be the sweet spot is aggregating the digital footprint of what someone claims to be. And there's a bunch of different ways in which that can fail. And so manually, it means, well, there's tons of open source and closed source databases as to where somebody worked, and our information is on the internet, whether we like it or not. It's a matter of fact. Like, my phone number is on there, whether I want it to be. My personal email is, and there's a lot of open source and closed source ways of basically triangulating someone's information to say this aligns or this doesn't. And we found that to be very accurate. And so it's helped us. And then there's some other things we can do, in terms of like looking within like an ATS to see if there's, similarity between like one resume to another. That's also something. But we've also, with the network of our companies on our platform, which is around like 250 plus, we're starting to build almost like this intelligence on what we've seen before, because there's millions of people that our agents have been reviewing. We're able to understand if we've seen something before, if it's been called out somewhere else, we can pin it immediately. So there is like a network effect based approach to this that helps with just the benefit of time. We've been doing this for 9 months, so we have built up quite a sizable, repository, I guess, of being able to identify who's fraudulent, who's not. There's still lots of new things coming out. I saw some really great comments of, looking at like LinkedIn profiles and like obviously the creation date. But as we evolve, other people will evolve and trying to get past it. So I think it's obviously like how you look forward and all the different ways that you can, see around the corner.
Yeah, but I think fundamentally, it looks like what Tofu are doing is basically trying to like aggregate all of the people data of a particular individual and then see if they corroborate with each other. And that's obviously one of the better ways to do it. I mean, we do that manually, but obviously that's impossible to do from a practical point of view. But here's where AI could be a friend of ours, and it could help us, do a high volume, high speed type return and make sure we do cover things that way. So yeah, very interesting that you're building this, Jason. I think it might not have been the initial aim, but I would strongly encourage further pursuit in it, because I think it is going to be inevitably a growing problem, and I think a critical problem at some point, where companies will have to have a solution. It's not like, oh, you have to have an interview scheduler or you have to have a sourcing automation. No, you have to have some ID verification tool, because otherwise you're going to be making dangerous decisions that could be critical to your business. So yes, Sean, we have to leave that for another day. We are actually talking about the EU and AI Act next week. In fact, maybe that's a good time to bring a conversation of this type to it. Jason, I'm gonna have to let you go though at this point. Thanks for joining me briefly. Love to dive on a little bit and learn a bit more about the product in a different setting. But hopefully we can tee that up at some other point. Where are you based, Jason, by the way, location-wise?
Toronto.
Cool. Yeah, it's not too terrible time zone wise. So yeah, we'll try and fix something up, and we'll hopefully learn a little bit more about what you're learning in your journey, Jason. So thanks a lot for coming on. We have to come to an end at this point, folks, because we are well over time. We are back next week, and in fact, to a related topic, AI regulations in TA and HR. We're going to do an update because it's Q2. We're well into Q2, as a matter of fact. And yeah, what the heck is happening with the regulations? I think it's important for us to have a regular pulse on what is going on in terms of where we are with the regs, particularly with different jurisdictions, because we seem to be diverging on those. So next week, we've got expertise from UK, EU, and US, who are going to talk to us about the current state of regulations there and whether some of these tools can and should be used. Make sure you sign up for that. We'll be back. I think it is the 2nd of May, 2 p.m. BST, usual time. Okay, folks, that's it. I got to let you go. It's been a long chat, but very interesting, hey? Keep safe there, folks. Keep alert, and good luck with handling all of your candidates, both real and fake. Thanks for watching, everybody.